Hi, welcome back to Enrollment Rx's webinar series on reaching new heights on Salesforce for admissions. This is webinar 6. We're going to be talking about managing events on Salesforce for recruitment and admissions. My name is Lawrence Levy. I'm the president of Enrollment Rx. We are an ISV partner of Salesforce. We were founded in 2008. And we're solely focused on developing products for recruitment and admissions on Salesforce for higher education. I'm thrilled to be joined by my colleague, Mark Farrell. Mark, please tell us about yourself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Mark Farrell, Senior Implementation Consultant with Enrollment Rx. I've been with the company for about 5 years, and I help our clients install, configure, and train them on all of our products.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Mark, again for joining us, and thank you all as well. So before we get started, I just want to cover the agenda for the day. So as we know, we're going to be talking about managing events on Salesforce for recruitment and admissions, and there's a lot of ways, as always on Salesforce, to tackle these kinds of challenges. At Enrollment Rx, we're going to talk about how we use Salesforce and how we use the standard features of Salesforce. And then we've also developed what we call Events Rx. And Events Rx is a product that we have built on Salesforce to fill in the gaps and provide that additional functionality that higher education, that colleges and universities need for recruitment and admissions specifically. So we definitely want to talk about how we're using Salesforce and then how we have filled in those gaps with Events Rx, that product that we have built on Salesforce natively to, again, provide that functionality. And as always with our products, to provide functionality that makes it easy for operational administrators, for non-software engineers to really take control of the system and manage the system from a user perspective. So we're going to describe Events Rx first and foremost. And from there, we're going to talk about using standard Salesforce campaigns, what Salesforce describes as campaigns, and how we would use campaigns in recruitment and admissions to manage events. Thereafter, we're going to talk about custom events. Beyond the standard Salesforce campaigns, what about custom events? And why would you want to use a custom event? And how do you create itineraries as part of events? So we're going to be describing that in detail. After that, we're going to talk about appointment management and the idea of a single source of truth calendar, where a user, a staff member, can log into the system and in one central location see all of their appointments and all of their events across not just the CRM, across Salesforce, but also Google or Outlook, and have that be updated and appearing inside of Salesforce, so you have that single source of truth from a calendar and appointment management perspective. And then, of course, as we always discuss, we want to talk about system composability, the need to empower the operations administrators, really be able to do much of what you're about to see with mouse clicks without requiring a software engineer. So those are the agenda items that we're going to talk about, and of course, we're going to take questions. So just again, quickly, before I turn it over to Mark, who's going to take us through the demonstration, to remind everybody, Events Rx is our product that we built on Salesforce to provide that additional functionality, extend the Salesforce platform with the requirements for recruitment and admissions event management. And you're going to see a lot of examples of that today, but it's essentially providing that composable capabilities to very quickly create events, create registration forms, control the logic, the branding, the experience of all of that from the front end and the back end, so that without being a software engineer, we can manage those events, deploy those events, and configure those events. So that is Events Rx, our product built on Salesforce. As far as using Salesforce campaigns to manage events, so Mark's going to show us this in just a second, but campaigns is a standard Salesforce feature that many marketing folks, of course, are familiar with and want to use as part of their marketing initiatives in order to manage all things marketing. So events would just be one element of marketing, but there's all of the other communications, marketing communications, and so forth that would go into that. And many marketing teams are well accustomed to using the campaigns object within Salesforce for those kinds of purposes and would want to use, and it makes sense for them to use the campaigns object as well to manage any kinds of events, open houses, info sessions, webinars, anything like that, where they might want to leverage the standard campaigns object in Salesforce alongside maybe the marketing cloud and other components to promote those events. So we're going to describe that and talk about how you can do that with Events Rx to create events on campaigns. After that, we're going to talk about those custom events with itineraries. And not to get too technical too quickly here, Mark is going to take us through this in just a second. But one of the limitations of campaigns, of standard campaigns, is that you actually can't have what you see there below as a related child object. So one of the things that we know colleges and universities need in recruitment and admissions are events where some types of events also would require itineraries. So for example, a campus visit where I might sign up for a campus visit on a particular day. And on that day, I might also want to sign up for sub-events like, eat lunch with a student, or meet with a professor, or audit a class, or take the campus tour. So those are sub-itinerary items that I might also want to sign up for. And in Salesforce speak, in order to architect that and accommodate that, you would actually want to have an object which also had related child objects. Well, again, with the standard Salesforce campaigns object, you actually can't have a child object. So to accommodate those kinds of use cases, we have custom events with the ability to support itineraries. And again, Mark is going to take us through that demonstration in greater detail. Finally, we want to talk about that single source of truth experience, appointment management for those one-on-one appointments. If you do have prospects, students, applicants, and other constituents where you may want them to be able to sign up for an appointment with a counselor or an advisor or other staff members. So we're going to explain how those staff members can create their availability, control their availability, display that to a calendar where then prospects, applicants, students, constituents can come to that calendar and sign up for those appointments. And we'll go further. We'll explain how those calendar pages can be filtered, can be controlled. So if you just want to display certain types of advisors or certain types of appointments, those are the kinds of things, of course, that we want to be able to also support from the front end user experience. And then again, from the back end user experience as a staff member, we want that single source of truth calendar where it also integrates with Google and Outlook, as well as all of the Salesforce appointments in one place. Lastly, to re-emphasize throughout the demonstration, we're going to describe system composability. And the greatest example we can always give is that Mark Farrell, my colleague here, he's a very talented Enrollment Rx administrator and Salesforce administrator, but he is not a software engineer by any means. And everything you're about to see, he himself can create, can configure, can implement. And that is really the promise of what we call system composability. It's empowering those operations people to be able to do everything that you're about to see without relying on a team of software engineers or extensive technical resources in order to configure and support. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Mark, and we can take a look at the demo.
All right, thank you, Lawrence. Let me bring up my screen. So like Lawrence mentioned, we're going to talk about a few things today. We'll talk about the campaigns, and then we'll talk about these, what we call visits, and then we'll talk about the appointment manager. So what I'm going to do is show the front end kind of student experience first for the campaigns and visits, and then I'll show the back end of Salesforce. Then we'll go over and we'll do the same for appointments. So what you're looking at here is just one of our Enrollment University demo websites. And you can see we have some blocks down at the bottom. And we have come visit our campus, which is going to link us to our events calendar. And then we have a schedule an appointment, which is going to link to our appointment manager. So if we go to come visit our campus, we're going to be brought to a public-facing website that's going to house all of your campaigns and what we call visits. So I'll use those two terms, and although similar, they both have their differences. Campaigns are, like Lawrence mentions, are those standard Salesforce campaigns that we consider kind of one and done events. Setting up, coming for an open house, maybe you have a freshman welcome meeting, something like that, where it's for a specific day and time, and people just register, show up, and go about their event. Then what we have are called visits. Now, these are similar to campaigns, except it allows you to create what we call our activities, and it lets you select things that you might do during that day. So if I want to come to a campus visit, and maybe that day I want to have lunch with a student, I want to meet with a professor, I would like to talk to somebody in financial aid, I would like to attend a class, I would like to take a tour, and I can pick my times. This allows the individual to then pick and choose activities that they want to do that day, which then in turn we can provide them with a confirmation email that has that itinerary tied to it. But either way, we have this public-facing site, which we'll be able to create, and you'll be able to customize with your logo, your header, footer, color scheme, things like that. You're able to see how we have a calendar on the left, and then we have a list view on the right. We have some customability there where we can flip it. We can have just the calendar or just the list. You can change the colors. And if you notice, in my calendar, I have a light blue and I have a dark blue. So my light blue is going to be my campaigns. My dark blue are going to be my visits. And then across the top, we also have a search feature. So if you have events that have different criteria, then somebody can easily search for it. They can search, through a date range. Very easy, very simple to be able to find what they're looking for. Or they can simply just come and click on one of the open items here, or also one of the event titles in the list. So if we look at our Monday open house, and what's going to do, it's going to bring up basically a registration page. And this registration page is going to be able to have all the information on the event that you provide, date, time, location, things like that. And then it's also going to have a registration form where you're able to collect information based on, whatever you want to collect. Maybe you want to, if they're serving food, if anybody has food allergies, if you're giving away t-shirts, what's your t-shirt size, things like that. But as you see here, we have just basic kind of information across the top. And then we have this registration page. Now, one of the things that if anybody's attended any of our previous meetings, we do have a product called Form Builder that allows you to create basically custom pages. So with the native campaign functionality with Salesforce, we have a native registration page that could be used, or in this instance, we could use our Form Builder tool to be able to create a registration page that's a little bit more robust. So any field that you want to create and bring onto the page to collect, you can. And then as somebody fills out this information, when they hit submit, they'll get a confirmation email with all the pertinent information that you set up in the template. But also it's going to go ahead and create a contact in Salesforce, and all these fields of information are going to live there. So if I were to fill this out, which will take a little bit more time, I'm going to go ahead and just show you a confirmation email. So you can set up a template, you can provide images however you want, and basically when somebody receives the email, or when somebody registers, they'll have a confirmation for their email. Now, if we go back and I look at the visits, it'll look somewhat similar, but you'll notice there'll be a few differences. Because remember I talked about how people can set up their activities. Well, with that, you'll be able to see that I'm going to have some different options when I click on a visit. So similar, you'll be able to populate information across the top that'll have all the start date, location, things like that. You'll still have a registration form, so you'll be able to collect all the pieces of information you want. But then at the bottom, now we have this new activities section. So you'll notice I have some options here that I can try. So maybe I want to attend the class. I want to go to the admissions presentation. I want to have lunch. This financial aid session here is to be scheduled. So one of the things you can do if there's activities that you don't have a time right now for them, maybe you need to see how many people might want to be interested, then you have to coordinate times with that particular person. So you can set things as to be scheduled so that now you can at least collect the information of people who are interested. And then separately, you can start to set up and coordinate times, things like that. And then I have my campus tour. Now, what's also nice is that I already have this attend class at 9 a.m. If I want to do the campus tour at the same time, it's going to not let me do both. So I can't double book myself accidentally. So if I want to really do this one at 9, well, I can't really do that one at 10. So it looks like I can do a campus tour at 1 o'clock. And then similar, when they submit their registration, they'll end up getting an email confirmation that'll look something like this, where they'll have an itinerary of items that they're going to, attend while they're there. And you can customize the columns here. I just have the start date and end date, but you could put location, things like that as well. And if you notice, I added a couple other items to this email template, which you could have in the other one as well, but you can add the links to attach the invite to your Google Calendar, your iCalendar, or Outlook. And then there's also a link down below to cancel. So if you have to cancel your registration, you can. So very easy, very simple. It's a great way to be able to provide a public-facing site for people to be able to see event availability, register, get a confirmation email, and then they'll have everything they need to come attend their event. Now, how does this all kind of look and work on the back end? So if I go over here, now I'm logged into Salesforce, and we have an Events Rx admin panel that helps control all of this, both our our campaigns and our visits. Now, I'm not going to click into all of these because we're going to spend most of our time over in the events calendar section, but I do want to point out a couple of items here. So manage templates. When you create those registration pages, you have a look and feel for them. And you can do a couple of things in order to create those. One, you can create a new template and you can create it from scratch. So meaning if I have HTML code, I can create a template that has just header, footer code, and I can create as many of these as I want. But let's say you don't have HTML code and you just want to create something and you're not going to use a developer, you don't have resources to do that. Well, we have some out-of-the-box templates basically. So if you create a new template and then you use the out-of-the-box template, you'll notice a little bit different. We still have header and footer, so you can still, if you wanted to, edit the HTML code. But if you look at the bottom, we have this little WYSIWYG here. So here you can just update a few items, background, foreground, text, highlight, color, things like that. Add your logo. And then this way, you don't have to worry about knowing code or having code or updating code. You can just use an out-of-the-box template and you can populate, your school colors, pick your fonts, upload your logo, things like that. And again, you can create as many of these as you need because when you create a campaign, you can select which template you want to use. So let's go back to our admin panel. The manage visitor lists. So remember those columns that you saw? Well, this is basically where we can control those columns that you can see either in your list that you can print out as a roster for your event, or those columns that we saw in that email itinerary. And then there also is the option for scanning a QR code. So you could put a QR code in those event email confirmations and people can print them out and bring them And if you're logged into Salesforce using the Salesforce app, you can use, a scanner from the app and go ahead and mark off attendance that way if you want. But the majority of the items that you'll be working in or we're going to be talking about are here in the calendar. So this calendar looks very similar to the calendar we saw on the public facing site. We see our open house, we see our campus visits. Across the top here, we do have the ability to just look for one or the other. So if I only want to display campaigns, I can. If I only want to display visits, I can. And right from here, I can create my new campaigns. So I'm just going to go ahead. I'm not going to create a brand new campaign right now, but I want to point out just a few things. So if you create a new campaign from scratch, right, a lot of this information is going to be blank and you're going to fill it in. Obviously, the name, whether or not it's active, the date and time. You can select, RSVP dates, waitlist dates, things like that. Set your number of max registrants. And we have a default setting that you can populate so that things like font size, things like your messaging, some of those things can just be automatically entered so that you don't have to create them over and over and over again. Here's where we talked about templates. So I can select the template I want to use, and I can put in all my registrant information. And then down here, you'll see my email templates. So now I can select which template I want to use as my registration confirmation, which email do I want to send if they're on a wait list, which one do I want to send as a reminder, and I can set how many days before the event do I want to send that reminder. And down here is messaging. So these fields, again, if we have them set up in our default, then I don't have to enter them here. After I create a campaign, I leave them blank, and then the default values would get populated. And I always have the option to come in and update those if for whatever reason this specific campaign has, one or two different pieces of communication that I want to update. And then down below, I just want to talk about a couple of things. One about guests. So you are allowed to, set it up so that you can bring guests. And with the guests, we have basically two different options. One is I can say, yes, I'm going to bring a guest and just ask how many guests are you bringing, including yourself. So you can allow people to bring up to however many guests you want. And they'll just select a number, me and four other people. Or you can set up guests so that they're actually providing specific individual information for those guests. So if you go that route, then it's going to ask, what's the guest's first name, last name, email? So then this way you'll have exact names and contact info for those individuals, and you'll be able to create records on those guests.
And Mark, sorry, can I just ask you, so that section that you were just talking about there above those messages there, so you're saying not to be confused with like the emails right above it, which are those confirmation emails like, hey, you've registered, or hey, you're on the wait list, or sorry, the event is full, right? Those are emails. But then these messages, are you saying these are the messages that they would see on the next web page after they actually register through the form? Then the next page they will see on their website is what these messages are controlling. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Or if there's an error on the page when they're registering, they'll see these messages as well.
So in
So
addition to
yeah,
great. So in addition to the email communications that need to go out, of course, there's also that online experience that happens after they register or after they submit a form or try to submit a form. What do they actually see? And that may differ from event to event. So you're saying here the event coordinator or whoever's responsible can actually control that online web page experience.
yeah, absolutely.
Right.
So let's go into one real quick that's already set up, just so you can see it all filled out. Now, another thing that's nice is instead of starting a new one from scratch every time, most likely the events you might have, once a month, once a week, once a quarter, but they're similar, right? So instead of starting a new one from scratch, You can always come and clone an existing event and then just swap out maybe your dates, your RSVP dates, your start date, your end date, maybe the location's changed. But this way, you don't start from scratch every time. You can just clone an existing event. And then with this one, you can see all filled out, all my messaging, and you'll notice I have a couple other things now since this one is already live. One of them are my campaign members. So here's where I can start to track all of my registrants that are registered for this particular campaign. So that's a campaign. Let me go ahead and show you now a visit, and you'll see a little difference, but for the most part, a lot of the basic functionality is the same. So let me go into one of our visits. And if you notice, when I clicked on this visit, I'm brought to a different screen than I didn't see on my campaign. And the reason you see that is because this is a reoccurring visit. So now when I click on it, I have the option, do I want to edit this one day's visit, or do I want to edit all of the occurrences in this series? So here, if I click on just the one for today, looks very similar. I have the same information as far as messaging, the templates I want to use, description, email reminders, days before my, reminder to be sent, my max registrants, and then you'll see down here, now I have my reoccurrences. So I have this one set up for two reoccurrences for my Tuesday and Thursday. But the biggest difference between the campaigns and the visits are those activities that somebody's going to select to do for that day. And in this instance, now you'll see this related activities tab. Here is where I would be able to set up and configure what those activities are. So in this instance, we have attend a class, admissions presentation, eat lunch with a student, financial aid information session, and then a campus tour. Now from here, I can also create a new activity. I can also come in and edit these. So let's say I have my visits every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but let's say on Wednesdays, for example, financial aid isn't accepting, appointments, or maybe your campus tours aren't offered on a Wednesday. So this way I can come in and I can configure these activities so that some of them might be available every time this visit is there, and other times it might not be. And you have that flexibility to be able to configure each one of those separately. So those are the two kind of biggest differences between the campaigns and visits. And the visits do allow for that more granular planning if, your situation calls for it. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the appointment manager. So back on my home site, right now, if I want to go ahead and schedule an appointment. So Lawrence mentioned the single source of truth calendar. So to us, what that means is if you're trying to schedule appointments, or if you have admissions counselors, they want to schedule appointments with students, they want students to be able to select appointments for them. You really don't want to have to worry about managing, an appointment manager calendar as well as their work calendar. And then as a manager, you want to be able to see who has appointments scheduled, things like that. So what I'm going to do is show you, again, the front end experience as a student or a potential student, and then we'll flip over to the back end. And if you notice, our calendar looks very familiar. We have additional kind of filtering options across the top. So I can select, if I'm looking for a specific staff member, or maybe I'm looking for a specific mode, right? Maybe I don't want to come on campus and have an in-person meeting. Maybe I want to have it over the phone or via Zoom, something like that. Or maybe I'm looking for a specific topic, right? Maybe I have general questions, but maybe I have a specific topic. Here, somebody can come and do some filtering so that they're going to be presented with the appointments, the open appointments that meet what they're looking for. Otherwise, when they come to the calendar, they're just going to see all of these in green, which are availability for a specific person. So as, a potential student, I can come to the site and I can say, all right, I want to meet with Debbie Director on this particular date and time, and I can register for this appointment. It's going to ask me, from obviously my personal information. and we'll talk about the date and time. I have an opportunity to submit any questions ahead of time. So this way you can give the person kind of a heads up of what you want to talk about, give them some time to prepare, maybe collect some information for you, and then submit your registration. And just like the events and the visits, after my registration, I'm going to receive a confirmation email. Again, I'll be able to add it to my calendar, Outlook, Google, or Gmail. And then I'll also be able to reschedule the appointment. So after I make the appointment, if something comes up and I have to change it, I can come to the reschedule link. It'll bring me back to that person's availability, and then I can select a new date and time. And then kind of what happens is as that person registers for the new event, the old event now automatically becomes open. And then the new event, the person will receive a new communication, a new email letting them know about their new day and time. And it'll also have a reschedule. So if you have to reschedule again, you can do the process all over again. And similar to the events, obviously you can control the branding, the templates, header, footer, things like that. So you can customize it to make it look like yours. All right, let's take a look at what happens on the back end. So here we have our appointment calendar, and you'll notice there's a lot of colors going on. And you'll notice on the right-hand side under my display, I have some color coding and everything is checked off. So let's run through the user experience for an internal kind of staff member. So I'm able to kind of filter and go through my calendar month over month, things like that. And then my display, these are the types of events that I have access to see. So we have Salesforce events. So these are the events that are created in Salesforce. We have Google events and Outlook events both synced to this. Most likely you would have one or the other. But if I start to tick these off, you'll notice that they start to go away. So I can control what pieces of information I want to see. And if we look at the bottom two, the light green is my availability. My dark green is my appointments. These are the ones that are booked. So here you can see I have the one booked for Debbie Director at 9 in the morning and the rest are open. As an individual who's using this, if I have the ability to give somebody a permission to see other people's calendars. So as a manager, if I want to see everybody's calendar, or if you want just everybody to see everybody's anyway, you can create you have a setting that you check off, and then individuals either will just see their own or they'll be able to see everybody's or manage other people's as well. And if we talk about how do you manage them, so across the top, we have this new availability button. If I check that off, now here's the interface where I'm actually able to set up my availability. So I can select, I can do either, one day at a time, or I can set up, Monday through Friday. I can do a start time of 9 in the morning to 6 at night. I can make my appointments, every 45 minutes with 15 minutes in between. And I can select, the topics that we're covering, the modes that we could have the meeting in. I can configure and set up what registration page I want to use. If we had a web conference, I can populate a URL in here. Again, I can control my templates. So what's my email or what's the confirmation? What's my reschedule? And down here, I can build out reminders. What's a little bit different between campaigns and visits versus this, the campaigns, you saw there was really just one spot to have a reminder email. We could create more reminders using Flow natively in Salesforce. But with Appointment Manager, you can set up multiple reminders right from the interface. So here's where I'd be able to set up my availability, and then I would have all of my light green options down below. Now, if you were going to register somebody, or if you wanted to register a student, or in some cases, maybe invite a student to register for one of your appointments, you can do that. So with this invite contact button up here, I can select an existing contact in Salesforce. I can select an email template that I want to send them. And I can basically send somebody a link that just says, hi, I know you wanted to touch base. Here's a link to my calendar. And what we can do is we can configure the URL in that link so that when somebody comes to this page, it's already going to be checked off with just that, just me, just that one individual. So I won't have to go filtering and searching through, dozens of other availability. I can send somebody a link that just goes to my specific calendar. Or I can invite somebody or register them for a specific date and time. So if somebody said, I wanted to talk to you, tomorrow at 9 o'clock in the morning, you can come to your open availability. You can find your contact. You can register the appointment, and then they'll receive the email confirmation for that. And then they can reschedule if they need to, same functionality. And then let's say you have your event or you have your appointment and now it's concluded, you're done. So once you complete your meeting, you'll be able to come in here and you'll be able to put in any sorts of notes, that you had on your conversation. And this button's not illuminated because this hasn't happened yet. But here now I can actually complete the appointment when it's over so that I can still keep track of not only which appointments do I have open, which ones do I have people registered for, but now also which ones have actually been completed. And it allows me to go ahead and create my notes and put in some comments that I can track later. So those are, obviously not everything that goes into campaigns, visits, and appointments, but hopefully it gives you enough information so that you can see how we use some of the basic, I don't want to say basic, some of the native Salesforce functionality and how some of the things we've layered on top of it so that somebody in specifically the higher ed space can use all of this functionality to be able to manage that recruitment and admissions process.
Right. We want to remind everybody that this was the 6th of a 9-part webinar series. We have 3 left. Next Wednesday, February 28th, we're going to be talking about how to analyze your data for recruitment and admissions. We're talking about reports and dashboards and best practices around those creations and management of all of that. The week after that, March 6th, we're going to talk about CRM and SIS integration. So integrating Salesforce with your student information system, with Banner, with Colleague, with Genzabar, with PeopleSoft, and so on. So we're going to be joined by our director of integration, and we're going to be talking about all of our best practices around that. And then to wrap it up on March 13th, we're going to talk about preparing for a future-proof implementation and deployment of Salesforce and all of the best practices that we believe are important to consider when you are preparing for a proper implementation of Salesforce for recruitment and admissions. So those are the 3 remaining sessions. Please feel free to join. For all of them, you can sign up on our website at enrollmentrx.com. We hope to see you there. And with that, Mark, I'm going to turn it over to questions. So let me pause and let me just see what questions we may have here in the chat window. Sorry, give me 1 second. Okay, so we do have a question, which was, can we use event management? Can we only use appointment management is essentially what the question is. So I'll let you answer it first, Mark. Does the system, the product allow for that kind of level of segmentation where you can just use it for some type of events, but not other events? And where is that line drawn? And is that between appointment management? How does that work?
So with Appointment Manager, so technically Appointment Manager is under the Events Rx umbrella. However, you can have the ability to do what I showed as the campaigns and the visits, and it technically is separate from Appointment Manager. So technically you can have one without the other.
Okay, great. I know that one of the common things we get asked about is when it comes to appointment management is beyond recruitment and admissions. Is sometimes we get asked, can other departments use the appointment management feature specifically in their use cases. I mean, like academic advising, as an example, student success. So certainly we believe it can be used for those kinds of use cases. It can extend to those use cases. And if there's scenarios where a college just wanted to license it for those kinds of users, we have that level of flexibility. But I think really for the majority of our clients, we see it either as being used all as one, or they might just be using it with events and probably not using it for appointments right off the bat, I think is what we commonly see. Is that right, Mark?
Yeah, and as long as the person is a user in Salesforce, then you can set up and use Appointment Manager for really anybody. So if you do have financial aid wants to use it, academic advising wants to use it, if they're users in Salesforce, then yes, you can have Appointment Manager be used by really any group. Primarily, we see it on the admission side, but yeah, it could be used anywhere for any group as long as they're a Salesforce user.
Okay, great. We have another question. So, Mark, you were showing earlier how applicants, a student, a prospect, whomever may come to that calendar page and see those events or even see those appointments. You alluded to the idea that we could also filter that by different criteria. So sometimes schools will ask us, they'll say, look, we want to send an email to all of our grad students where it's click here to see upcoming events for only grad, or click here to make appointments with only graduate advisors. Is that the kind of filtering that we could include in the link itself, so that when they actually land on that calendar, those kinds of filters are already pre-filtered?
Yeah, absolutely. So similar to how we would do one for appointment manager for one specific person, you can do the same for events and visits under certain criteria. So a lot of the filter criteria that was across the top, if I had graduate events, or if I had demo days, if you had a specific topic, a specific, filter item, then yeah, you can create the URL so that it is basically already pre-filtered, and then include that into your email. And then this way, when somebody clicks on it, it'll basically be pre-filtered how you want them to see it.
Great. Excellent. Okay, we have another question here, which is, can you clone events or campaigns, I guess any type of event, I would suppose for that matter, whenever you want to create multiple campaigns that are similar but just on different dates? And I think this is a very important question. I mean, the idea of recurring events, and even when you do have a recurring series of events, what happens if the sub-activities, those itinerary items, are different on different days? Or if on one particular day in a recurring series of 100 events, you need to cancel one day's 10 a.m. campus tour. How does that work? What does that look like? What's that impact?
Yeah, you can do it. You can set it. So first, yes, you can clone any event, any visit, and then you can, create and update days, things like that. So that would create kind of unique instances of that. You can also add the reoccurrence to a campaign or to a visit, so that it will create basically the children or the child kind of association, so that it will just be one kind of main, let's say, visit, and then it's offered, every day over the next, 2 months. And then you can go in and update those individual occurrences. So maybe, obviously you want to cancel the ones that fall on a holiday. So you can just cancel out those. Or like you mentioned with the activities, maybe certain days of the week, certain activities just aren't available to be used. So you can go in and just check off and close out the ones that you don't want to use. It comes down to personal preference. It comes down to, the way you want to manage it, sometime the way you want to report on it. So sometimes it's easier to just, clone an existing campaign, change 3 or 4 fields, and, be done with it. And now there are two standalone ones. Sometimes it's easier to create a reoccurrence for a full week so that you have like a Monday through Friday, together. And then you can kind of check off and close out the days that you don't want appointments at all, or you have specific activities that you just don't offer that day. The flexibility is there to do, to cover both scenarios. It really comes down to, at the end, what's best for the person trying to manage this. And, I don't want to say there's a right or wrong to either one, but it's flexible enough to accommodate both, and it allows you to kind of figure out which one, works best for you to manage.
Great. Thanks. Mark, we have another question here, which, may be similar to the idea where when you were describing if somebody clicks on a link from an email and we're pre-filtering the events that they're actually going to be seeing based on certain logic. So the question here is, can we pre-populate event registration forms? So if somebody does click on a link, if we invite them to the next open house, so if we invite them to the MBA tour, can we pre-populate their data in that form? Without getting too technical, Mark, I mean,
Yeah. So a lot of the things that I showed today was somebody coming to a registration page and registering themselves. There is the ability that if somebody already exists in Salesforce and you want to invite them to a campaign, then yes, you can send those individuals an email. Then those individuals will get a personalized URL so that when they click on the link, because you have their first name, last name, email, stuff like that already in Salesforce, those pieces of information would already be filled out on the form, and then they can just go ahead and answer any additional questions that, that form might have. But yeah, you can invite an existing contact, and then they won't have to, fill out the form from scratch.
right. We have another question, which pertains to mobile friendliness of the user interface. So to the extent that how friendly is, let's talk about both the calendar page, the listings page, as well as any registration forms. How mobile friendly are those pages?
Well, all the pages are mobile friendly, and a lot of times it comes down to the particular person's, device. But all the pages are mobile friendly, and you should be able to, view the calendars, click and register and do everything through a mobile device. I mean, obviously it doesn't look the same with the side by sides and things like that, but they are mobile friendly. So it looks a little bit different, but the functionality is still there.
And I know, Mark, I mean, but I think you can confirm this. So I know that our products come with templates out of the box. So for example, we have like 5 templates where you can easily style them similar to you were showing earlier. You can style those templates, configure the footer and header and all of the user experience. But I know that in our case, our templates, if you choose to use our templates, they are certainly mobile responsive and mobile friendly. I know that if you choose to create your own, you want to be mindful of that with whatever developer, HTML developer might be creating that. But if you choose to use our templates out of the box, you can configure your own look and feel, but they are already mobile responsive, if that's correct, right, Mark?
Yeah, that's a good point. All of our out-of-the-box templates are mobile friendly, but if you do decide to create one on your own, then that is something that you would have to just double check and test and see how it looks. Because yeah, if you're going to build your own header, footer, stuff like that, then you'll just have to account for mobile in it. But like you said, our out-of-the-box templates are already set up like that.
Yeah, and I think that nowadays, I mean, of course, there are clients that are going to be particular when it comes to their style and their look and their feel. But I think the majority of our clients, I think nowadays take advantage of the ease of our templates and are able to match their color and their style and are very agreeable to accept that the templates thereafter as they are created. So they do seem to serve the majority of most of our clients' use cases and requirements. But again, if you do have your own style or branding that you want to use, you can create those, and you should ensure that those are mobile responsive.
Yeah, our templates help you get out of the gate faster. We see a lot of people use the out of the box templates, in the beginning, and then maybe down the road they might, have some time or they might get some resources to maybe go ahead and, do some custom work. But the out of the box templates, like you said, you can pick your colors, you can pick your fonts, you can go ahead and, update all your own, the school's information and get out of the box just a lot faster.
Right. All right. Well, I think that is all of the questions we have for now. So with that, I want to again say thank you to everybody for joining us, and please join us again next week. And these will be recorded. These are recorded and these are posted on our website and on our YouTube channel, as will this one. So thank you again. You can catch the recording there. And thank you, Mark, for joining us as well.
Thanks, Lawrence. Thanks, everybody.